All right, guys. Going to start this off like a standard Zoom meeting. Can you guys hear me proper? Yeah, okay, awesome. Can you guys see my screen? Yeah, okay, nice. So, macOS security, am I right? Gonna start with asking you to imagine. Imagine yourself in Las Vegas. You enter a smoky casino, you go up to the back, sit in front of a slot machine. You drop in $1, pull the lever, and the reel starts spinning. It's kind of exciting, isn't it? It's always like, you don't know what's gonna happen. Are you going to win something? Are you going to lose all your money? You don't know. The reason I'm saying this is because the vulnerability that I'm going to talk about today is kind of like a slot machine. Just sit in front of your computer, give it a spin, and you can win stuff. And the question is, what are the prizes? Now, of course, it's not cash, but it's information. With this vulnerability, you can win some pretty cool confidential information. How valuable that information is kind of depends on how lucky you are. So you can win all sorts of stuff. Wi-Fi passwords, software licenses, credentials. But of course, if you are super lucky, there are exciting prizes as well. What's a jackpot, you might be asking? But the biggest jackpot that I've ever managed to hit with this vulnerability was root access on 45,000 devices at the same time. That's a lot of apples, right? I'm going to tell you today how I did this. So welcome. My name is Marcel. I am from Europe, Hungary originally. If you don't know anything about Hungary, that's perfectly fine. Two super interesting facts that you need to know. Hungary gave the world the Rubik's Cube, and Hungary gave the world the internet sensation Hide the Pain Herald, which if you put the two things together kind of makes sense. I work for this amazing remote-first company located in the UK called Form3. We are a fintech company, and that's where I started researching macOS stuff. Now, this talk is going to be in 3 parts. In the first part, I'm going to talk about why we started researching this whole thing, what was kind of the journey, what steps we took. Gonna give you like a basic idea of what's happening. In the second part, we're gonna do some hardcore reverse engineering, really dig deep down on how the MDM process works. And in the last part, we're just gonna look at the prizes, what we can do, what we can achieve, how we can rob the casino. So, let's get into it. Like all awesome research, I think, this also started with an alert from our SOC, which doesn't sound interesting. We had one of the most unusual alerts. So we have like our own MDM setup, of course, for Apple. And one of our devices was logging in from Brazil, actually, from South America, which, being a mostly European company, that was kind of strange. Our first thought was maybe, one of our users just decided to take a vacation and didn't tell us. Or, their laptop decided to take a vacation, aka it was stolen and somehow ended up in Brazil. We didn't know at the time, but the more we looked, the stranger it got. The strangest thing was that when we looked closer at our MDM, the original device was perfectly fine. It was online in Germany, where it was supposed to be, and somehow there was a duplicate of it in the MDM. A phantom device logging in from Brazil online at the same time. And yeah, we just couldn't put a handle on it. We didn't know much about, to be honest, about the whole MDM process Apple uses. I come from a Windows world, and I just assume that MDM is something that you install on the device manually, and that's how it works. It's there's kind of a user consent element to it. Apple does it completely different, of course, like all other stuff. It's also super user-friendly. I mean, if you look at the admin side of things. The way it works is Apple has something called the Apple Business Manager that as a company you can sign up to. And essentially, from the moment you sign up, all the Apple devices that you purchase either directly from Apple or from an authorized reseller are going to be automatically registered in Apple Business Manager. This is not an MDM itself. This is just like an asset registry of sort, but all your devices are going to show up here. Now what you can do as a company is you can just go set up your own MDM server. This can be on-prem, this can be software as a service, something that you purchase. The point is you take the address of that MDM and you can configure that in Apple Business Manager. Now the whole idea of this is that you purchase the devices, they sit on a shelf, you don't touch them, you don't install anything on them. They are in the original packaging. You send it to the user, and the moment they open it, the moment they turn it on for the first time, they're going to be greeted by your company's logo. They just, magic happens in the background, and somehow the MacBook knows that it belongs to your company. Super user-friendly, super awesome, super huge black box, because nobody knows how it works in the background. As we did our investigation, we figured out that essentially the only common thing that the Phantom device had in the MDM with the original was just the serial number. So it was like a completely different model, completely different hardware, different software version, and the only thing they shared was the serial number. And we really didn't understand what was going on. So our thinking was that maybe, just maybe, the only information that the MDM enrollment needs is the serial number itself. Now, which number am I talking about? So if you own like a MacBook, if you go to the info page, it's like, that number there. It's very short. It's not like a UID. It's only 10 to 12 characters, alphanumeric. So it's like a very, very small key space. And I think, if you think cryptographically, you probably know where I'm going with this. I wanted to replicate this thing. So, I wanted to see how the accidental rogue enrollment happened. So I started digging around. I personally never owned an Apple device. So I used a lot of Hackintoshes, which you call, for all Apple-related stuff. And one of the best ones that I used was the OS X KVM project by Colia. It's on GitHub. Basically, it lets you create a macOS virtual machine on Ubuntu, which is very useful, I think. And I figured, if I have this virtual machine, I can just somehow edit the binaries, edit the disk, maybe change the serial number. So yeah, I got right to it. One of the most important things that you have to mention about the serial number is that it's super not secret. So for one thing, it's literally printed on the cardboard box that the machine comes in. It also ends up in, device manifests, bills, everything. And if you just search GitHub, you can find like tons of serial numbers. So it's not exactly public information, but it's not super secret as well. So I created my virtual machine, took the serial number from our compromised machine in the MDM, put it in the config. If you just recompile OpenCore, it's going to create like a boot disk for you, and fired up the machine and hoped for the best. And surprise, surprise, when I turned on the machine, it just got enrolled into our MDM. So I now had 2 Phantom machines in our MDM, which is awesome. Again, this is showing up as totally different hardware. And what we could take away from this was that we were right. The whole enrollment just depends on the serial number itself, which is a bit scary if you think about it. Now, we got lucky, fortunately, because the only thing that we had in our MDM at the time was the self-service application, which is just like an application drawer that lets you lets your users install various software that you deploy there. And we only had like a single free version of Adobe Acrobat in there, so nothing super confidential. But it got me thinking, because I assume that there are other companies out there who use this for much more complicated stuff. And with much more confidential information, internal tooling, etc. You get the idea. So we closed the investigation, no security impact, etc., etc. But I just started my own investigation. I wanted to know if there are companies out there who are vulnerable to this, actually. And that brings us to the second chapter, reverse engineering. First thing, the serial number itself. I mentioned it's like very short, 10 to 12 characters. The newer format is only 10. This is the older format up to 2021 that Apple used. And I think you're starting to see the problem here probably. It's a very fixed format. So the first couple of characters determine the manufacturing location and the manufacturing date. Now, I only ever saw two variants of the manufacturing location, so it's basically static. Year of manufacture, week of manufacture. The unique identifier is basically like a sequential number. I'm guessing it's like the literal serial number, you know, when it dropped off the belt. And the last four characters is just a model number. So if you have 2019 MacBook Pro, it has a number. Based on this, you can probably already guess that it's very, very easy to generate perfectly valid serial numbers based on this, which we are going to do later. Now, to understand the MDM process, we have three key players. We have the Apple device, of course, that the user just opened. They unpacked it. They are turning it on for the first time. We have iprofiles.apple.com, which is basically the API for Apple Business Manager. And we have the company's MDM server, which they set up, on-prem or in the cloud. Set up everything, set up LLDB, strapped burp suit into it, and just started investigating. The first message that gets sent out when the machine is turned on is this very, very small JSON. And it kind of verifies that we were already suspecting, and we already knew actually, that the only information that gets used in the whole process is just the serial number. So this is the message. This gets sent to Apple Business Manager. The response from Apple Business Manager can be two things. So if the machine is not enrolled into any company's MDM, then you get an empty response, not interesting. But if the machine is enrolled into MDM, then you get this very massive dictionary with a bunch of information about the company, which is already kind of valuable. I mean, it's not, not super secret information, but it's also not public information. You get like the internal support phone number, email address, the person responsible for the MDM, the location of the offices, stuff like that. And most importantly, you get the address of the MDM server itself. Now, things can go two ways from here. There are actually two endpoints used by MDM. One of them is a newer one, a web-based, which takes like a massive base64 encoded payload. And the second one is an older one, takes the exact same payload, just in XML format. Again, the information here is kind of basic, some hardware info about your MacBook, the serial number, UID. But again, the only thing that's really used here is just the serial number. So that's the valuable part of the whole message. So this gets sent to the MDM server, and the MDM server replies. Now, if we as attackers are unlucky, we're going to get hit by SSO, which is, the company was smart. They put SSO on their MDM enrollment, perfectly fine. But about 60% of the time, there is no SSO at all. The enrollment just happens, which is, the part which is interesting for us. So with this information, I decided to try to weaponize this. I think you can already guess the weaponization is going to be kind of simple. What we are going to do is we're going to take the serial numbers, we're going to take the information that we know about the serial numbers, the format. We're going to just go generate valid serial numbers or scavenge GitHub for serial numbers. We're going to just pull Apple API. The way I did this was I instrumented the profiles command with LLDB, just swap the serial number in memory, and just get the messages, get the MDM server addresses. One thing I have to mention here, like 5 minutes into reverse engineering this, I found an amazing article from Duo Security called MDM Maybe. If you look this up, you can find out a bunch of details about how the process works in more depth, also how you can easily instrument this. But mind you, this article is literally the only source of information on this whole thing on the internet, and it's from 8 years ago. So Apple has known this issue for at least 8 years now. Now, I hit a few small roadblocks by weaponizing this. The first one was kind of scary because my script just stopped working at like after 10 serial numbers. And I just assumed that Apple was smart. They rate limited the API. I was fully prepared to do like a rotation of VPNs or whatever. But I noticed that there were literally no packets leaving my machine, which was interesting. So I started reverse engineering, and got to this snippet of code. The TLDR of this is that what they do is actually they save the date of the last profile enrollment attempt in a file. And if that file reaches 10 lines, then you're just not going to get any other enrollments. You get rate limited. So it's essentially client-side validation, relevant meme attached. This was my epic bypass for this. The only time I was bummed by this was when I tried this in January and it didn't work, and then I just realized I have to increase the year, but it's just me being stupid. Okay, other stuff. If you get hit by SSO, there's a slight chance you can bypass it. If we think back of the messages that I mentioned, with the old endpoint and the new endpoint, there is a chance that the company either didn't know about these, because I'm pretty sure this is hidden somewhere deep in the MDM settings, or just, they just migrated to the new one and forgot about the old one. But sometimes in the XML that we get in the first part, which contains the MDM URL, we get two different URLs. Now there's a trick you can do. If you just go on disk, you can edit the downloaded enrollment profile, swap the new URL for an old one, and there's a good chance that that one is not going to have SSO. So you can just bypass it. It's a very simple bypass, but again, about 60% of the time this works as well. Now, we kind of have everything ready for the weaponization. Time to try and rob the casino, right? We're going to look at the prizes. There are 3 categories of prizes that I came up with. Tier 1 is basic stuff, simple stuff. In Tier 1, we have, of course, the information that we saw already. This is the message that we get, support phone number, email address. Not super interesting, but we get this all the time. So, this is regardless of SSO, regardless of any protection on it. You just get this based on the serial number, period. Now, if you manage to bypass SSO or there's just no SSO at all, you are going to get a bunch of profiles installed on your machine. And these profiles can contain some, your mileage may vary, but these profiles can contain some cool information as well. Sometimes it's just, password policies or the EDR agent that the company uses, but sometimes they can have awesome stuff like VPN certificates or network passwords or stuff like that. So yeah, and this happens again with each enrollment, so there's no chance involved. The other stuff, which I mentioned already, self-service. Again, this can be a mixed bag because sometimes the company just distributes free software there. Sometimes you get like licensed software, which is cool, free Microsoft Office for everyone. But sometimes you get internal stuff as well. So, custom tools that they use on their own network, stuff that the company developed, which kind of opens up a new attack surface for us, which is, interesting. You can also get passwords with this. The lowest tier of password that you can get is the local administrator password, because when the MDM agent installs, it just creates a local account. And if the admin was sloppy, basically, they are just going to set the same password on all of the devices. And because the MDM agent uses DSCL under the hood, basically it just gets transferred in clear text. So you just look at the burp logs, you're going to see the admin password arriving to your machine there. And there's a good chance you can reuse this admin password on all of the machines. So this was Tier 1. If we up the stakes a little, we get to Tier 2. These are some of the cooler prizes. At the top of the list here, we have Wi-Fi passwords, which is understandable because you want your new joiners to be able to connect to the office Wi-Fi. But getting these is kind of complicated. Now, the issue is that the virtual machine, of course, does not have a dedicated wireless card. And for whatever reason, Apple just decided that if your machine doesn't have a wireless card, then you cannot install wireless profiles. So it's just going to fail. I tried everything, literally. Like I connected a USB wireless card. I tried to virtualize a wireless card. It just won't budge. So in the end, I took the deep dive and reverse engineered how the whole profile installation works, and found out that it's actually quite complex. So you have these profiles being transferred to your machine, but they are encrypted and signed at the same time. And it's not just any certificate, it's like a per-device certificate that gets agreed when the MDM enrollment happens. So it's very difficult to decrypt. Fortunately, for the rejection to happen, so that it knows that it's a Wi-Fi profile, the profiles command have to actually decrypt it. So if you are smart with LLDB, you can just hook the relevant NS dictionary function, and you'll just have the whole profile in clear text in memory at one point. So you can actually dump the password without actually installing the network profile. Again, mandatory meme attached. I did, of course, some bug bounty hunting with this. It's always a pleasure to try to explain how I managed to get the network password of a network in California from Hungary by doing an MDM enrollment with a rogue VM and just guiding through someone through this whole process just to get a network password. They usually give me a $50 bounty as a punishment for this, but I deserve it, Okay, more interesting stuff, and this is where it gets a little bit more risky from the admin side. Sometimes administrators, I guess, they just hit a problem that they cannot solve within the confines of the MDM. And that is where they decide the worst thing that an admin can do, just try to solve it themselves. And, most MDM solutions let you create shell scripts that are executed on the machine. And admins can get very creative with these shell scripts. I have found Slack tokens, GitHub credentials, SharePoint API keys, LDAP passwords, all sorts of stuff in these shell scripts, just embedded. And the problem with this is that I think people just don't understand or don't realize how easy it is to recover these credentials. Because, everyone thinks this is like a closed ecosystem. You just, put the shell script in the MDM. It somehow, in an encrypted channel, gets pushed to the device. The device is, of course, locked down because the users are, they don't have root privileges on the machines. So they just assume that no one can get to these credentials. The problem is, of course, if a rogue enrollment happens, then it just ends up in an unsafe environment, and everyone can just look at these passwords. So yeah, this is where the magic happens. Now, and that brings us to the jackpot. What is the jackpot, you might be asking? Well, the jackpot lies again in the shell scripts. And the problem is again the same. I'm just guessing here, but I think at some point an MDM admin will hit a brick wall where they just can't solve the issue within the MDM. They can't solve the issue with the shell script. And I'm pretty sure there's a frequently asked questions article somewhere on some of the vendors page that says, if you can't solve your problem, here's a simple solution. Put an API key in your shell script that will allow access to the MDM's own API. And yeah, that's where problems will arise. I have to give a huge shout out here to my co-author, Magdalena, for finding these functions within the MDM, because MDM API documentations are usually super massive, and the naming conventions can be all over the place. But long story short is basically in each and every one of the MDM APIs, there is somewhere hidden function that is literally just a reverse shell. So it lets the administrators just push one-liner shell scripts to any arbitrary machine enrolled in the MDM, And if you have an API key that you recovered from one of the shell scripts, you can just abuse this. Of course, sometimes administrators are smart, and they are going to restrict the scope of the access token. But if you just think back of the shell scripts, it's the same problem with this whole thing being a black box. People just don't realize how easy it is to get these credentials and how easy it is to abuse them. So, it's just the key to the kingdom. And that's how basically I got to the point where I hit the jackpot and got like root access on 45,000 devices at the same time. There are a few key takeaways here that I like to leave on the board for a while. Basically, these are just good advices to all of the admins. Are there like any MDM administrators in the room? Someone with the blue team? There you go, good sir. Well then, I guess this is for you. These are just defenses for each one of the issues that I showed you previously. Basically, the first thing that you need to do, if that's like advice 0, always put SSO on your MDM. That's like a must. And to avoid bypasses around the SSO, always check the documentation of your MDM software, because I'm not sure how they call this, to be honest. I'm guessing it's like a legacy endpoint or an endpoint for legacy devices, but make sure that the SSO extends to both of them. I've seen that the legacy endpoint tends to use LDAP-based SSO instead of like true SSO. So yeah, just turn on all the checkboxes, make sure that these are protected. If you absolutely must push credentials in any of the shell scripts that you use, be super mindful of these. Just always assume that these are sooner or later going to end up either in the user's hands or in the attacker's hands. Think twice. Reduce the scope of these tokens, reduce the scope of the credentials as much as you can. Least privilege and all. For the admin passwords, I'm hoping at least that all of these MDM solutions have like an option to generate per machine passwords instead of just pushing a single same admin password for all of the machines. As a remote attacker, like me enrolling into an MDM from Hungary, it's not like a huge risk. But if there's like a red team working on your network, they can get pretty far with a single admin password. Some MDM solutions have the option to turn on SSO separately for self-service. I also highly recommend this. This can be like a last line of defense if somehow all the others fail. Many of the shell scripts and many of the tools that I've seen that could be abused are not pushed as part of profiles, but more part of the self-service itself. If you have an in-house security team, it's always a good idea, I think, to let them do a security review of the scripts. One of the other less interesting issues that I found with the whole MDM process and using shell scripts in the MDM is that it's like a very, very easy mistake to make that leads to local privilege escalation. Because the MDM agent runs as root, obviously, because it needs access to all of the machine. And if you do the smallest mistake in the shell script, just download something to /tmp or do a risky copy operation, you will end up with a race condition that can be abused by the user. And because they can trigger some of the operations from self-service, this can be a very, very reliable exploit to local root. So again, if you have like a red team operating, or if you're a red team yourself, it's super easy to abuse. And yeah, the most important thing, just please do not put the MDM's own API key into any of your shell scripts. Just don't. But if you absolutely must, then please double check the scope. Make sure that the functions that are accessible with that API key can in no way be abused. Sometimes, I've seen properly reduced scope tokens, but even those had like read access, so it could get like personal information of users and stuff like that. It's a very good idea, I think, to just download the Postman collection of the vendor and check the key for yourself, what you can access with those keys. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. How do you like them apples? I would like to ask, are there any questions? Don't be shy. Oh.
I think it doesn't. Oh, yeah. Thanks. It was really great to hear about all of this. I have a question about the thing about SSO. You thought that basically you can get the config, and in the config it may be like reveal two different links. One link which will point to the service which enrolled SSO, and another without it. And the question is, are these services are kind of the same? So basically, you're getting inside the one which has SSO enrolled, and let's say you somehow bypassed it, and you're getting a lot of software from the service. But if you're going to the service which doesn't have SSO enrolled, is it the same as the one with SSO enrolled or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's the exact same end result. So you are going to get the exact same enrollment. The only difference I think is I think the old endpoint is primarily used by mobile phones and iPhones, and the newer one I'm guessing is mostly used by MacBooks. But there's absolutely no difference in the end result, in which way you get in. So, but yeah, that's a good question. Thanks.
So it will be like the same software, the same thing, or it will be like...
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's also vendor independent. So I guess I haven't seen it, but I think Apple publishes like a developer documentation for MDM, developers, because there's like a very good open source MDM project and good GitHub that you can check it. It just tells you a lot about the MDM process. And I think they either have like the choice of implementing of both the endpoints, or it's pretty much up to the vendor how they handle this. But the end result is still the same.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, so basically to get like enrolled profile, the only thing you need is to just guess the serial number. And they didn't really enroll any authentication using like, I don't know, Apple account or something?
That's again a very good question. And if you go to the Duo Security article that I mentioned, they do say that they reported this issue like 8 years ago. And basically Apple's answer to this was that they don't provide any additional security around the whole MDM enrollment process. They are kind of shifting the responsibility to the vendor. So it's like a phone book basically. You just look up based on the serial number which MDM it belongs to, and that's it. And if you do a more in-depth reverse engineering of the whole thing, Apple has very visibly done everything to obfuscate this process. They have like a different TCP protocol for this whole API call. So the easiest point you can just hook this is in memory. It's very, very difficult to analyze and reverse engineer. But on the server side, it's still very simple. So it's just absolutely no security, as you say.
Yeah, thank you. And the last question, sorry for this amount.
Go for it.
It's a little bit out of scope, but have you tried to mess around MDM protocol itself?
Yeah, that's, again, I just love these questions, man. You're really into this. Awesome. So yeah, that would be a next step for me, honestly, in the research. I want to create a scanner, basically, that you can, as an administrator, run on with the knowledge of your, URL of your MDM instance. I have reported a bunch of vulnerabilities to MDM vendors as well, which unfortunately at the time I can't disclose. But yeah, there are some nasty things on the MDM side as well, because again, it's just, I think both parties, Apple assumes that the security is done by the MDM vendor, and the MDM vendor assumes that any request that come from the Apple devices has already been vetted by Apple. So it's just falling through the cracks all the time. So yeah, that's the next logical attack surface. Good, well spotted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions, awesome ones. Anyone else? All right, guys, if no questions, then I think I'm just going to give you the 5 minutes back. And thank you for attending. It was a larger crowd than I expected. Thanks.